Keeping it real, in today's corporate work environments, being healthy can sometimes seem impossible. Are there just a few small steps that you, your team, or anyone can take so that you can feel better day in and day out, get more stuff done, and help drive you, your company, and your team towards a better future? Thank God the answer is yes. Subscribe to the channel right now and kick your feet up and take in some easy steps that you or anyone in your company can take to have a team that performs better because they're feeling good. It is a sunny day here at the 𝗦𝗶𝗆𝗲 Cafe, and perhaps that's no surprise because we're talking about my favorite god, Helios, the Lord of the Sun. But before we get into the details about Helios and why his story matters to you, I'd like to welcome our guest, the one and only Deborah Voisin. Deb, welcome to the 𝗦𝗶𝗆𝗲 Cafe. Tell us a little bit about who you are.
Well, thanks for having me, Scott. I'm your old friend. We've known each other a long time.
Yes.
One thing that happened was you were my very first dance teacher in the basement in the 1980s. And it ended up becoming a lifetime of studying the health aspects of movement. So I'm the founder of something called Moving as Designed, where people can understand what aspects of movement will help them perform better, get rid of pain, and live a better, longer life.
I don't know why you're sitting up here talking about us dancing in the 80s. I just turned 31 2 days ago. But if you say,
yeah, I meant the 99s
I will
And you know, we just keep dancing, Scott. That's why we're killing
and that's
it
probably why you at least look like an immortal. And with that, I'm going to get into Helios. Helios is commonly confused with Apollo. Apollo was the Greek god of light, but Helios was the sun itself. Helios brought light into the world by driving a chariot, a golden chariot, commandeered by 4 horses from his palace on the east side of the earth to the top of the firmament, and then down to the west side of the earth where he and the sun set every day. Then he would get into a ship or a cup, depending on the version of the story that you choose to believe, and ride it back to the east again to begin his sojourn all over. Helios was part of, and I think this is not inconsequential for the purposes of our discussion today, was part of the older order of gods called the Titans. He was not of the same immediate family as the 12 Olympians. So why is that relevant? At the beginning of time, Mother Earth, Gaia, some people call her Gaia, mated with Uranus, the god of the sky. And together they created a family of super gigantic, radiant, beautiful, primordial deities called the Titans. The Titans ruled the world through a golden age for presumably thousands of years. But a prophet told the chief Titan, Cronus, that if he had a son, that son would depose him. And that scared Cronus because he had become the Lord of the universe by deposing Uranus, his father, himself. Eventually, nonetheless, Cronus, against his designs, ended up having a son that came to adulthood. That son was Zeus. And Zeus and the other Olympians overturned the rule of Cronus and set up the family of gods that we all know now. Cronus was not the only Titan to have children, though. There was another Titan by the name of Hyperion, who literally was the embodiment of light, who had 3 children. One of them was Selene, goddess of the moon. One of them was Eos, the goddess of the dawn. And the third was Helios, the god of the sun. When Zeus deposed Cronus, there was a war between the Olympians and the Titans, and it lasted many, many years. All of the Titans had to choose a side, and so did the Titans' children. Helios, Selene, and Eos chose the side of the Olympians. And so when the rest of the Titans were overthrown, when the old world order was overthrown, those who had sided with what was new were able to survive and continue in godhood, basically. And that is why Helios and the sun maintained their status within our society and maintain it to this day. Helios, as the sun, had the power through his light to dispel lies and untruths and darkness. And so it was said that you could not hide honesty or reality from Helios. He could see everything. He was therefore known as the guardian of oaths. And his temples had light skylights above them, so the sunlight would go in and you would make your oaths. And in fact, in the Iliad and other ancient Greek epics, there are descriptions of people making oaths under Helios and the light of Helios, because he was a guardian of oaths. You couldn't lie in the sunlight. The sunlight also is what nurtures life and brings health. It's my belief that a leader, an organization of any sort, cannot thrive for long. It certainly cannot be sustainable without what Helios brings into the room being honored and respected. I identify with Helios as someone who sheds light, who brings radiance and literal enlightenment into the world. But why does Helios speak to you, Deb?
Wow, Scott, that was so rich.
Oh, you.
I picked a very simple reason for Helios speaking to me. When I went through various health awakenings, I found over time that the simplest principles organize the universe. The simplest things like gravity and light, and the role of sunlight with energy production in our bodies, and how there's something like photosynthesis in our bodies that is a key to free energy. So I picked Helios because when I picked very simple practices based on the movement of this one heavenly body, I picked practices based around the time that the sun rises or the time that the sun set, or amount of time that I get my body in the sun. And the health benefits were so surprising, doing very simple things over an extended amount of time, that I just have to say, what it brings to mind is having clear and strong organizing principles that are simple. Whether you're a leader, whether you're someone looking to feel healthier, whether you're restoring your natural rhythm, that things don't have to be complicated. And I also love what you're saying I didn't even know it's the oath protector of oaths. You know, bringing things out into the light, talking about things, not I've lived in this apartment last year where there was some toxic mold. That's because it's closed in, it gets dark, it gets wet. When the sun is shining on something, a lot of bad things can happen. Now, not that we want 24 hours a day of sunlight, everything in moderation, but that's why I'm attracted to the sun. It's a very basic, holistic symbol of health.
I cannot resist asking the next question. Deb, you did it to me. I blame you. You teased me. You had a health issue that drove you to sunlight as a modus for a remedy. Talk to us about what exactly happened, because for those of you, you and I have known each other for a long time, and anyone who watches you on social media will be struck by one of your dominant themes, which is you in a dress racing along on a treadmill. I mean, it is kind of hard to believe that someone who was raised in the 80s is doing that every day, yet you do. And then it's even more shocking hearing that you had some sort of health crisis that might have led to all of this happening. So, girl, what's the story?
I take such pleasure in how I move now, in part because I don't recall having a natural ability to move well. Even as a kid, I was kind of a thumb-sucking, mouth-breathing nerd, picked last on the team. I was hiding in the basement, not not really understanding how do you learn how to move better. And that was part of where we connected is, when you feel safe, you can move better and express yourself. But then what happened later on is I didn't realize there were things I needed to teach myself that were natural ways of moving that I had somehow skipped through when I was a nerd just sitting all the time. When we don't spend enough time outside and playing and running around, our body adapts to the shape of a chair, and then you're just not as, the flow of lymph, the flow of your blood, everything isn't moving as well, and you start with a bit of a compromised ability and an increased susceptibility to injury. But I am a nerd. I will always be a nerd. So I just have learned the fastest ways to feel better. They're the most direct and they have the most lasting power, the least injury risk. And I've had many health crises. Even my son had Tourette's, and I learned to guide him out of that. And then I was surprised. I was like, well, if I could help him get rid of that using natural means, sticking his feet on the ground, getting plenty of time outside, eating more simply, I realized I could use the same for myself and regain my capabilities to move and my immune system to work better. So the sunlight, when I started to have symptoms of hypothyroidism, almost rheumatoid arthritis sort of symptoms, I noticed I almost always was inside. I like writing. I like using my phone. I have always had computer work. So I just made a practice every day, 20 minutes outside with as least clothes on as I can legally, with my bare feet on the ground. I just did it for 77 days in a row. My eyebrows started growing back. My hair started growing back thicker. And I didn't understand at the time why would that happen when I'd spent most of my life covering myself with, trying to avoid too much sun exposure. Well, what I learned was that when we do anything too big, the weekend warrior who hasn't exercised all week and then goes for that run and tears their Achilles, right? Or the family that's indoors all week and then they go to the beach for 8 hours one day and then they come back just lobster red. So this idea that everything needs to be kind of gradual and small, that a small dose of something powerful can have a huge benefit. The other thing I learned was that there are 27 forms of vitamin D that you can get through a proper biochemical reaction with sunlight. That's assuming your diet has enough cholesterol and assuming you haven't taken any drugs like statins to block your cholesterol. So I suddenly wasn't as afraid of the sun because I had also upped my minerals and my diet was okay. And the last thing, just 15 minutes of sunlight exposure kills, I saw at least, I can't cite the study, but something like 200 viruses and bacteria. Just 15 minutes of sunlight also improves your body's ability to uptake glucose, so basically manage your blood sugar, by 25%. So what I noticed is I started to like being in a bikini and not minding how I looked, because first of all, the tan looks great. But second, my biochemistry, my energy production systems were all working better. And that, if I'd had to slice this thing out into 1,000 pharmaceutical studies, there's no way I could have drawn this simple and holistic conclusion that a small practice like this could help so much.
Many of the people watching this show are in highly stressful, highly paid, highly time demanding sorts of positions. Like let's say you're an attorney working for big law. You may have to be in 7 or 8 in the morning and you may not leave till 11 at night. And when I was involved in litigation, particularly when litigation was hot, there were months in which I was taking a car home every night because it was so late that I would leave. And I almost never had time for lunch. Clients demand things when they want it. When I was in higher level, really senior executive positions, the demands half the time my ability to actually do basic things like follow up or whatever actual tasks were on my plate for the day sometimes didn't begin till 6 or 7 at night because I had so many meetings and other things to go throughout the day. And so the idea of getting sun, yeah, in my case, during some of my jobs, I had windows, so I guess I could get some sort of filtered sun that way, but that was about it. And other times when I was a litigator, a lot of that time I was in a windowless office. I wasn't even getting that sort of sun during the day. How can people who are living in the realities of those sorts of situations deal with what you're saying is something that is kind of essential, but their job demands just aren't allowing? Or do you think it's that they're just not their mindset, right?
What a fantastic question, Scott. Because I think that's one reason that the podcast I have called The Architecture of Health, it's a design thinking problem. And we need to be real about what we really want to do. For example, I love being a nerd. I love my computer. I love writing. I love my phone. I love creating content. And I do the minimum. I do the bare minimum of what it takes to feel good. Now, those are a lot of constraints. And I don't think there's, so we need to start with what we can do. So one of them would be, now I don't know the full research behind it, but a lot of people use red light therapy, especially in the winter months, because there are parts of the world where it's dark all winter, and those people, they tend to drink a lot. But so there could also be possibly some choice in the type of lamp you have. I know incandescent, even though the environmental movement is heading towards all LED, the actual frequencies of the light emitted by incandescent is more natural to our circadian systems. Also, you can wear blue light blockers so that at least the blue light coming from your computer or your phone at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock at night. So that's not, so part of what we're talking about is, we have this sun as this organizing principle that has been here through all of human history. And I had the freedom or created the design of my life that I was going to design it around this huge organizing principle. And yet we can at least take out the things that are interfering with our body's knowingness of what time it is. Our body knowing, even though there's no window, if we get rid of some of the false signals that tell us it's 5 a.m, because what we also want to get back to is that deep rest. We want to get back to that. That's the only time the body heals is when it gets in a deep rest and digest state. And so that anxiety state is one of the things we want to work at, protecting the sleep as one of the things. So another is a simulation of grounding. I told you that one of the things I do is I go out in the sun as much of myself as I can. And I'm in California. That's why it's so expensive. And I know, like there's snow everywhere. There's cement. It's not easy. So we're going to have to start by simulating this nourishment. And one of the things, instead of sticking your feet on bare grass, you can, have a grounding mat. Here I'm using one right now under my computer. This black mat. So without effort, I can be touching something that is going through the grounded prong of my electrical outlet that then somewhere at the base of the building's foundation is also going into the ground. So I can get a taste. I can remind my body like, oh, there, I can overcome whatever electromagnetic these modern frequencies. I can kind of give my body a taste of, oh, there's this way of being that my body remembers since it was barefoot and walking on the earth, my ancestors, right? So, and in the bed, you can, $100 sheets from Amazon, so that all night long your body gets a relief from the computers and the fluorescent lights and the LED lights. And the artificial, just giving your body little tastes of the natural, in my opinion, will help you make the small shifts. And what we want are small shifts. We don't want any crazy, like, I'm quitting my job and I'm sitting in a squat all day with bare feet in Central Park. No, you don't need to do that. So I would say that as we start to remind our body that it's safe and that we've got this, because we're descended from, ancestor after ancestor that had these organizing principles about feeling the ground. And finally, like even right now, I can choose where to put my feet. I'm sitting at a desk. Right now, my feet are touching something over there. I could put my feet on the ground and just remind myself that there are natural and easy ways of connecting back to what's nourishing for us.
If I am a CEO, I might be saying, oh, that's wonderful, Deb. Thank you. How woo-woo. I've got to make money. I've got shit to do. Or you might be an attorney who is saying, I've got billable hours that I need to clock. Or you might be a doctor who's saying, well, you know, even as a doctor, I won't really disagree with what she's saying, but there's another patient coming in 2 minutes. How do you respond to them? Is it conceivably true that even small steps are too much?
The book Atomic Habits.
I love that book. I don't know that everyone who's watching this has read it, though, so talk to us a little bit about it.
It just keeps recurring to me every time I tell someone about how I've been doing these 111-day challenges, where I'll pick something like 10 breaths, 10 breaths of a specific type. And I'll do that for 111 days. And then when you pick a very small change, it needs to be easy if you're going to do it for that long. So I would say the problem a lot of people have is they try too big of a change. Then their body rejects it. They're like, no, that's asking too much. And that's also part of the problem, right? Like maybe we work 80 hours a week, which, I didn't become a lawyer, so I don't really even know what that feels like. I was in tech where maybe a 50 or 60 hour week once in a while. And yet being able to, instead of have this binary switch, the 0-1, like I'm on vacation, I'm sitting in the sun 12 hours a day for a week, or I'm going to the gym and I'm working out hard for an hour every single day. Well, for example, our nociceptors and proprioceptors in the body, our nervous system and our sensing systems, they reset our patterns every 8 hours. So interrupting yourself with a tiny change several times a day in the long run is going to have a bigger benefit than sort of these picking too big of a goal and then putting it off and then crashing into it all at once. For example, when I used to drive 3 hours a day and had a tech job, I learned a simple shift to make to my car setup that was the opposite of what most people were doing, and it was based on ancestral ways of sitting. And villagers in West Africa, I gained an inch of height.
What?
I was driving 3 hours a day because the chair I had been in before, the car seat had assumed a dummy that had back pain. So when I learned these shifts that let me be in a relaxed and upright way in my car, I didn't inherit the postural point of view of the designer of that car seat that's wrapping the neck and it's wrapping you into this bucket seat. So when I returned to my body's own support with this simple cushion called that Esther Goclay designed, and knowing how to use it and how it fit, I turned what I was already doing into something that was more nourishing. So I think really that's the key, is this sprinkling like salt or pepper on this mindfulness on what you're already doing, whether it's how you're holding your phone, like is it normally in one hand where that shoulder starts to get jacked up? Is there, could I use a speaker or use voice more often? Like just starting to find how can we and that's the thing I like about Helios is like the word North Star doesn't really make sense when I'm mixing these metaphors, right? But having a guiding principle, kind of like a leader of an organization, you have the company's mission statement, you have simple organizing principles. You don't have a 10,000 page long document where you're micromanaging down to everything, but you have this idea of, in general, the right direction to go so that you can course correct. You're making a small change to how you sit, small change to your shoes, throw a grounding pad down. At your lunch hour, open the door and get some natural light in your eye. Get that office with the window. Pick a vacation where you can stick your feet in the sand.
Do you feel that corporate America is ready to hear this, because one embedded critique that I am hearing within your words is that, and I could be putting something there that you're not saying at all, so correct me if I'm wrong, is that, well, right now our culture is one that doesn't necessarily encourage people to explore these simple steps, or can encourage health fundamentalism that is tied to, what some might call the pharmaceutical health industry industrial complex. For instance, we have more and more people that are taking pills to lose weight as opposed to exercising, and not to say that some of those people haven't tried to lose weight using exercise and diet and failed, but a lot of people, Hollywood stars come to mind, they probably have the resources to be able to lose weight without a pill, right? And they model behavior, or other ailments that people might be able to fix. Diabetes comes to mind, type 2 diabetes, that you take a pill for, or you can do small things over time that will eliminate your need for that. You're saying that these simple changes could bypass some of that. Is that really true? And is this really simplifying health unreasonably?
Wow, I love that. What a great question. And I would say in general, it's simple. It's not at all easy. It's simple and here's kind of where things got complicated and people started blaming themselves for agreements that a culture made. So simple. We know when we look at babies that are born and they have ample time to crawl around on the ground, they all move and walk and talk a certain way, like, almost all, unless there's a problem with the birth, or maybe there's some other developmental problem. This is the same blueprint that the villagers in West Africa who are still not using chairs have. And this is the same blueprint that if you look back at the art, 18th century statues, and you look at the way that the models that they were using, which were usually people who used their bodies a lot for work, or they were dancers. So we know a body that moves, that kind of doesn't have an interrupted natural pattern. We know what that looks like. The problem is when we've made agreements that we'd prefer to sit at chair height and not get up and down from the ground, then we've made certain concessions. We're like, in exchange for that means there are just certain things that are probably going to hurt more later, but there are better ways than others to sit in a chair. I still I'm choosing to sit on a chair right here, right now. But the main thing is to know that where things kind of got funny is when, even back, I think it was the 13th or 14th century, the early anatomy books were all based on corpses, a body that was dead laying down on a table. And the idea of labeling things and marking them up and separating them out to describe, how do we figure out how the muscles work? How does the body move? So the idea of how dynamic and fluid and adaptive and regenerative our bodies can be was sort of lost along the way as we try to get too reductionist, instead of the holistic view of the system where, a stressor and kind of like a tension bridge, right? The interdependence of all the cables creates an overall tension that the tensegrity of that structure is spanning the whole breadth of that structure. We are more like that than we are the bony cemented skeleton that is held together by wires that we're having to use to describe this system. So biotensegrity is this idea of energy, kinetic energy, and how our fluid systems work and we pump. So the reason I gave you all that is if we break out of this mental model that we're kind of inheriting this stiff and dead idea of the body, and that it actually can change way more than we ever imagined before. And that if we want to head in that direction of that 80 or 90-year-old guy who's still climbing the coconut tree, that's one reason I traveled to Benin, I traveled to Guinea, I traveled to Ecuador, is just see what is it like when people haven't adapted to our sedentary indoor lifestyle. Now, does that make what we did wrong? No. This ability to plan and think and write and collaborate and envision and design, that's priceless. where in history have we seen that work before? Well, monks sat around a lot and they had to do very focused writing. Basket weavers. So there are better ways than others to be sedentary, where you embrace what you're doing and you do it the best you can. The problem is a lot of the instructions have been a bit upside down. They're based on force, quote, sit up straight. No, that's fake. We need to actually sit down straight. We need to relax. We need to find the easiest, most gentle, simple, and relaxing things. And that's one reason I picked the sun is it was simple. Like, it gets up at this time every day. I actually just drive my car down to the end of the road. I don't even walk. And I just take a look at the sun. I do a squat. I come back, and it takes a total of 5 minutes. That was just a simple design that I can integrate for a while to see how it felt. So, and now, if we also think about the profitability and the quality of work, like I was in Silicon Valley where, at Google and these other places, the design teams were always on this front edge because I was a design researcher. They're always able to have the more creative work areas with the engineers and ping pong tables and lots of light. They were always, I worked with a lot of people who were trying to reimagine the workplace so that the body could be included. We didn't just have to be intellectual. And the quality of the work of the team when we include the body as an equation, we have to assume that when we're feeling better, we're working better. But when I'm going to write, like I remember when I used to write reports, sometimes 8 hours in a row, like you're talking about lawyers do that every day, all day, every day. I found a reclining position where when I wrote from that position, I felt like I was in heaven. And then I'm gonna try that. Resting and reclining is underrated. In fact, if you think to our ancestors, like the teepees didn't really lend themselves to standing up and talking. Like people laid down to have intimate conversations or sat on the ground. So am I saying do that at work? No. I'm saying that there's probably some kind of shift in your mindset. For example, in most chairs, it kind of makes us hunch a little forward, and then a lot of pressure goes to the neck. But there are ways to approach the chair so that my shoulders support my head, or even video gamers. Those people sit a lot. And some of the best ones, they're at standing desks or they rest their neck on the back of something. So am I saying, all I'm saying is there are many variables to figure out what kind of trade-offs there are, and including the body includes the brain. Out of this reductionist thing that the body and the brain go together in health.
If I am a middle manager and am listening to you, or an emerging leader, I'm like, look, do I want to be all out of shape and arthritic and have all of these problems that come from poor movement when I'm older? Okay, I'm not going to, I'll do these things that Deb is talking about. But, I work for these really old school people that are kind of stuck in the 1980s and 1990s mentality. Just put your nose down and work, and, put everything else, your family, your health, all that sort of stuff second if you're loyal. Do you have any thoughts about how someone who is in the position of that emerging leader or middle manager can persuade a more old school traditionalist boss to maybe support some initiatives, even if they're small ones, to be able to encourage the resulting better performance that can come from these sorts of simple system changes, even if they're small ones that you're talking about?
One of the mindsets to watch out for is, we tend to see exercise as this kind of separate thing. Like you need to go to the gym, you do your hour every day. And really the not feeling good is how we feel is happening right now. It's happening at every moment, and finding the energy leaks where there's some kind of pattern. If we just interrupt that pattern a little bit, it's going to be much easier. And so in terms of movement snacks, I used to feel guilty for being the one in my group who would always get up and go to the bathroom. I'd go get a glass of water. And I ended up being that little bee that was connecting the dots. Like I'd talk to the support person waiting for coffee, and then I'd talk in the elevator to the CEO's assistant. I felt so guilty because I was like, ooh, I look so ADD. I don't look like I'm crunching
Yeah.
as hard as everybody else. But at the end of the day, I would get this news back. Oh, the CEO loved whatever you and that support person did for that client over there, because normally my role would be siloed more away from these other people. So whether it's just this idea that we go away from judging ourselves as sitting still is the most healthy thing, maybe it is interrupting yourself. They say something like, even better than standing at a desk all day is just getting up and down so many times. In fact, I'll just do it now. Getting up and down from our chair because it's basically a squat a couple of times a day. Maybe there's an app that the company-wide, it just has everybody meet for coffee or get up and down from their chair. So movement snacks are overall, and an awareness of our ergonomics so that we don't have a low computer that's really inviting a movement that's going to be a position that's going to be hard to recover from. So 2 things: the design of your work area. 3 things: the design of your work area, intermittent movement as somehow being rewarded or encouraged, and then the 3rd thing is just the culture around. Are we, are we trying to be heroic by flexing how much we can suffer? I have to say, I remember in these groups, someone would just talk about the engineers that were up all weekend and then they stayed up overnight. And there's research from Stanford I kept citing in terms of tech work, at least with project managers. They were like, well, any hours over 50 hours a week was negative hours. So someone going 60 hours was doing the same amount of work as someone doing 40 hours. Now, but law is very different. It's such a deep logical dive. I can't say that crosses over, but that's the other thing, is I would look at the culture of my organization and whether we are rewarding health in the right amount.
One thing that I'd like to hear a little bit more about, though, is you touched on it briefly when you were talking about some of these tech companies, but if you're a CEO, particularly if your company is expanding, or if you are in any sort of operations position, you may be positioned to do something about this too. When it comes to new facilities or redesigns of facilities, or looking at new places that your company wants to lease space in, what sorts of elements might you encourage people to look at that can help foster this culture, even if people are busy?
Natural light, and the lighting fixtures. Those this is going against the flow where LED is even zoned. I think California even banned the sale of incandescent lights. So you'll have to look at what your region allows. But anytime you can include that natural light in a way that isn't reflecting off the screens. Also, I'm on the fence about the sit stand desks. But the desk setup and the computer setup, there are other designs to chairs that are coming out now that are better than some of the quote ergonomic stuff before. Walkability. Can any of your employees walk? Can they ride their bike to work? So you kind of look at the whole ecosystem of where it is. Can they take public transportation to the place? Because, okay, for example, in Japan, the United States has 4 times the number of knee and hip replacements as Japan, and their movement culture from young to old is less interrupted than ours is. They still, a lot of them still sleep on the floor. A lot of them still squat to do while they wait on the subway, but many of them are taking trains. So I think a lot of people in city environments are doing better just because they have to walk up. If they're in an older building, they walk up and down stairs. They're walking up and down to the subway. They're walking to and from things. So honestly, if there was one thing humans are designed to do, it's to walk. And whether walking meetings, I had one boss in a design group. Whenever we had a meeting, we always walked while we had it. The engineering teams, our meetings were often called stand-ups when you have a meeting every day, where it keeps the meeting short because everyone's standing up. And that way we don't just kind of hunker down and be willing to make small talk and waste everybody's time. So why did I say all that? So the physical the physical space is the air pure. Like you just said, you were getting colds. We are now on average spending 93% of our time indoors as a species. This is absolutely new. And the recycled air is so much less healthy than the outdoor air. I remember similarly when I worked at a tech company in San Francisco, I was also on public transportation. I was sick all the time, and we were in this small area that had kind of almost recycled air. So do you need air filters? And one of the main things you're reminding me of is if people are getting sick and they aren't rested, you're going to lose a lot of productivity. You're going to lose a lot of positive thought. And it's the same in the realm of movement. The greatest players are the greatest players because they're never injured. They're always available. They have all that extra time to practice. They have all that extra time to get better and better at what they're doing. And that's one reason I'm a conservative movement advocate. I don't tell people to just go start CrossFit and just go start weightlifting. I'm like, no, I'm 57. I'm picking the path that's going to have the least injuries, which is also, and I just have to squeeze this in. It might not totally fit, but one reason people aren't doing a lot of these healthy things is a lot of it doesn't work. I'm talking about things that really work. But for example, my worst injuries were from stretching. It was not based at all on what I'm designed to do. I'm designed to walk and run, and doing stretching that is making me worse at walking and running was a terrible decision. A lot of this, some of this fitness stuff is just people just want to get hot and sweaty, and they don't even know the way they're doing it could not be improving their overall longevity. So why I said all that is we need to look at, at the overall productivity. We're not going to have injuries. We're not going to have colds. And the more we can touch base with nature without becoming some floppy hippie that, runs around in bare feet, there's just a lot we can do. There's a lot we can do in between.
You are 57. Some of our audience members may be in their 50s, 60s, even later. Some of them honestly might be in their 40s. When I turned 41, a lot of what you were talking about just now, quote unquote exercise stuff that was really hyper competitive and more about showing off my strength or my power or my grit or all those sorts of things, as opposed to helping me be set up to live a better life. The work that I was doing in that realm began to bite me in the ass, and I started to have severe injuries. So really my health vision began to change earlier than it might have for a lot of people. But irrespective of when it happens, folks may look at themselves and say, I've already fucked my body up. Is it ever too late for people?
Oh, Scott.
And also, what if you have a disability?
First of all, the reason I'm so passionate about movement is how much I've fucked myself up. I think I already told you when I was 13, I'd sat in lotus position all summer reading. So when I went to PE in 8th grade or whatever, and they casually said, class, run a mile to warm up, I couldn't even walk the mile. I had to sit. My hips were so jacked up because I was doing what I thought was healthy. I saw the lady on TV. I'm like, oh, that must be good. She's all calm and pink and it's on NPR. Okay, I'll just do it. And I had no idea for years after that what caused my ankles to be so floppy and my knees to be so weird. So why I said all that is we need to know that some things out there are going to set us up for injury, and we need to invest our effort appropriately. Now, did I recover? Yes, but it's taken many years for me to figure out exactly what is it being pushed as healthy that's the opposite. There are many things, many myths, Miss Slayer, people calling things healthy that just aren't. Now, how do we, how much do we hope that we can recover? Like I said, the first part is we realize most of the body is fluid, and it's mostly fascia, which is like these rubber bands. It's a tension system, and retensioning it, more and more of the cutting edge sports medicine, physical therapy, and dance, those are the people I've spent the last 5 years training with, is because they have much higher expectations. Getting a professional athlete back on the field, you have to have much stronger magic than just helping someone making, they can have surgery and then take 6 months and sit around most of it, right? So why I'm saying this is even myself, I've had setback after setback because I'm hypermobile. I have to be more careful because I overstretched. I taught yoga 15 times a week and messed myself up more than anything else because I just trusted, oh, it's healthy. I overdid certain things. So like open hips, I needed closed hips, ladies and gentlemen. So what do I do now? I measure. I use the same tools I teach them to my students that physical therapists use to tell, did I restore the most healthy options for this joint? Oh, I overdid it. We need to be more put the body in a neutral place where it has the greatest amount of choice. And so being checking, is this really moving me in the direction I want? And I'm telling you, I had another crash. I copied a teacher leading a dance warm up. I love African dance. I will always love African dance, but I was copying someone stretching. And I knew, I was like, stretching and me, not doing this. But then I was like, well, everybody else is doing it. Maybe just go along with it, Deb. And I did. And then there was that loud popping sound as my groin tore. And again, and I was like, I've written a book about what not to do. And I just did it. I've written a book about this. I was like, and I just did it. So then I'm crawling to the bathroom for a month. And I tried going to all these trainers. But finally, I kept studying with these different sports medicine and physical therapy people. And then I was able to take what I learned from them and apply it to driving my car, so that the thing that hurt the worst was driving my car, where I turned that into a pro. And then the thing that hurt the worst was sleeping. And then I found different ways to prop myself up and move so that became the cure. Once I figured out how to unwind the pattern that caused that vulnerability, I was able to go from limping to on a treadmill within half an hour. But it took a lot of figuring out, and that's why I'm actually here. I want to help people cut through. Just because something is called healthy doesn't mean it's healthy. We need to have standards outside. And same with the way someone has mastered their work environment. You guys have ways of measuring, is something working, is something not. We need the same rigor with health. Is something truly working? Or are we just taking someone else's word that this is the way to go?
So someone who might have a disability and feel challenged by what you're saying, do you have thoughts about that?
Ooh, yeah. Thanks for reminding me. Like one of my greatest collaborators right now, she has half an arm. So she has to adapt. And I'm doing this very athletic stuff, and she's been dancing. She's even a pole dancer. She's really figured out how to adapt things. I've got other people I've been working with broken toes, and they can't get up and down from the ground. They can't easily get in and out of a chair. So the main thing, and there are worse disabilities, right, where someone is constrained to sitting. So first of all, we have to accept that our body is absolutely perfectly adapted to every single thing that ever happened. That is why we are so malleable. That is what makes humans different than all the other animals in the animal kingdom. We come out of the womb unfinished, and our neural networks constantly readapt and prune back. Oh, we don't need that. We do need that. We don't need that. And so we can use this adaptability in a lot of cases, unless there's, severe brain damage or whatever. It's this very adaptability that is both a superpower and a curse. Because if we let ourselves adapt in the direction of something we don't want, and we only become good at sitting in a chair, then one day when we're walking and we fall down on the ground and we can't walk, we'll have to consciously decide, wow, I want to adapt back to a body that can walk without very little risk of falling. So someone, if my body had to adapt, whether it was a car accident, whether it was a stroke, or if my body has made the perfect decision that I am a paraplegic at the moment, whatever it is, you have to start where you're at. The movement that human beings do the most is breathe. We breathe on average 22,000 times a day. Honestly, the breath is the safest architect. Now, am I saying people are breathing wrong? No. I'm saying that if we were very constrained, honestly, when I was 2 years ago, my hips had gone out another time because of all that damage I've done over the years. And I hired a coach out of India, and he would only let me breathe. I was laying in a certain position with my feet a certain way and my arms a certain way, and I could not believe how my body reshaped itself. I had to give up capoeira. I gave up African dance. I gave up walking 2 hours a day, and my body shape changed in the direction that looked good on social media. Like that kind of change. It was bizarre. My waist got tiny. My rib cage expanded, and I would have never thought that something so boring, something so dull as to think about, where my tongue is in my mouth, the angle, is there any tension in my throat? Can my ribs move? And part of it is because we've been trained the wrong stuff. People saying, take a deep breath. We all go in. We're a body that sits in a chair most of the time has got trapped inhalation. We need more of an exhale to write the wave of our adaptation back towards a body that can walk the rest of its life. We often need to do the exact opposite of what people are calling healthy. No, we need to, and so the good news is the people in the front edge are onto this. Lives are changing. People are getting rid of lifelong deforming scoliosis. The people with cerebral palsy are regaining their structure so they don't. People with Parkinson's who have been given, not a very healthy prognosis are whether it's, there are many of these cutting edge regenerative movement practices that include the wiring of the brain, include our ability to adapt, and this, most of all, this blueprint for how does the human body adapt and regenerate. And the first thing of all is planting the seed that more change is possible with the right set of instructions than we once would have thought. And eventually all the physical therapists, everything is going to catch up to this. It's just usually I tend to be 20 years early to whatever is going on. And like with my son, with the Tourette's, the autoimmune disease of the brain, the chemical sensitivities, the food allergies, the seizures, I didn't have 20 years to wait. So I got my researcher hat out and I went batshit crazy. I was like, I've got to find a case where this symptom got better. Oh, what was common between that case and that case and that case and that case? And so then you start to see patterns. And that's one reason I'm in this field is like, once you start to see a pattern, you can a pattern language. And when I was in architecture school, Christopher Alexander's book, A Pattern Language, it's not that every architect uniquely, I'm going to put this here and that there and that there. No, they are using patterns, and you just apply a pattern to a problem so you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. And that's what's going on in the front edge of disability. Now, I got to say one last thing. I've heard there's a big uptick in strokes lately. Who knows from what, but just crossing the midline, like the opposite hand and leg touching, just that wakes up the body's deepest coding that we're meant to walk forward through space. So just touching the opposite arm and leg like whether it's my hand on my opposite knee. So like one of my teachers had been a personal trainer working with a woman who had had a stroke, and she had been told, you'll never walk again and whatever. And one side of her body was turned off, and he just lifted up the limp hand and put it on the happy leg. And then she lifted up her happy hand and put it on the limp leg. And it was a couple of sessions till the brain recognized that pattern. So these, movement snacks, repatterning, there's a lot of great stuff. And don't accept, most of all, don't accept pain. Learn from pain. Don't accept pain. You might have to accept temporary limitations, but then you need to go all in on the things you can do, like breathe.
Deb, this has been really a fun, interesting, and enlightening conversation. I have learned so much. You've given me a lot to think of. One of the things that I will remember for a long time after this is simply making sure that I'm periodically touching the other part of my body just to be on the safe side. But the bigger lesson outside of that very tactical but important little tip is that small things can make a big difference. And they say that in performance, right? Small habits around maybe getting up 5 minutes earlier, or small habits to spend a little extra minute brushing your teeth. Well, that applies to simple steps that we can take that will make us feel better, be more productive as leaders and or employees, but most importantly, also get other folks on board who might be governing our finances or our culture to be able to support people doing that. Or if you have the freedom to build your culture, to make sure that you're integrating, even if it's just small steps, that attitude and that mindset into the leadership that you're providing. If there is anything that you would like to have the audience take away today, or something that you didn't have a chance to say yet, what might it be?
I want to bring it back to Helios,
I
back
love you.
to the
Thank
sun.
you.
Is that there's a predictable pattern. There's a predictable trajectory. It shifts a little, but organizing around a major known a certain recurrence. We know the sun's going to come. We know we're going to sit in a chair. We know we're going to breathe. We know we're going to use a computer. Like, how do we just really look at what is, and then feel the agency of prioritizing what is going to bring out our natural strength? You know, natural light helps our body remember that we are born to be strong and we're born to feel good. The grounding reminds our body, oh, I know what this feels like. I don't have to feel scared with all these alien new inventions, things changing so fast. And so I would say that there are just known patterns that work better over the long run, that they're simple and predictable, and to not get seduced by gimmicks, by marketing, by anybody saying you need to struggle, by anybody saying you should feel in pain. Just think about how the gentleness of the morning light, how it just starts trickling in, and then the evening light as dusk comes, and it's just the shift in the giant, gorgeous spectrum of colors. I was that person who, no matter how much my poor previous partner, he would beg me, oh, let's go see a sunset. Oh, let's go to the beach. And I was always like, no, I don't like the beach. I don't want to get sand. Oh no, I don't want to drive. And now I finally see that it's those simple, beautiful things, that feeling good can be simple and beautiful and not a struggle at all.
I can't help but think of, and many people watching this won't remember this, but there was a 70s actress named Suzanne Summers. She was in a show called *Three's Company. And I don't know if you remember, she had this quote-unquote simple little rubber tool that she hawked on television, where you would put the thigh master, put it between your thighs, and that would allegedly give you firm thighs. I don't know if I really believed that, but it's one of those things where, just because someone says it's healthy didn't necessarily mean that it was a solution that you thought it might be. Just because someone is putting this stuff out on the modern version of television, TikTok or Instagram, that it's necessarily the right thing. But sometimes simple, predictable ways that you can integrate things into your day-to-day systems, just like we integrate the hours of the day, which are timed to the movement of the sun into our lives, can be genuinely transformative. Deb, I know that people after watching this are going to want to learn more about you. Tell us where they can find out all about you. Some of this is in the captions below. And then also talk to us about anything that you're working on that we can rightfully get excited about.
Oh, thanks, Scott. My website is called movingAsDesigned.com. That's also got the links to my podcast called The Architecture of Health. The idea with both is actually we create environments for success. Kind of like the sun is that environment that we've grown up with. And health it's not a potion, it's not a pill. It's creating a situation where your body's innate abilities come out. And I'm sure that CEOs can relate to that as employees. It might just be a subtraction process to get rid of some of the obstacles for an employee. It's not that we have to invent everything from scratch. And so I work with people one-on-one. I'm teaching more and more small groups, whether it's Zoom or online. And what I'm working on is basically over the long run, I'm not there yet. Basically, I'm working towards how do I give people sort of like a quick start guide to getting the most out of their body. That's what in tech for 25 years, sometimes it would just be a sentence that was missing. and 9 million people
Wow.
couldn't use the software. And so I'm looking for where are these, what has been distracting or misleading, and how can we just really get at what's simple and true and real? I would say that walking reminds me, like, we are born to walk, so let those arms swing. Even if it's for a minute here and there, go to the bathroom and get that drink of water. The other thing is, I have an Instagram account. I'll put it in the show notes. It's Deborah Voisin, but I can't remember if it's a dot or a hyphen. And I run in slow motion, wearing gowns, barefoot, because we are born to run, and I'm celebrating that I'm reclaiming the ability to run that I never even enjoyed ever. So that's also kind of one of the pinnacle, if sprinting feels like flying and it's effortless, everything else is working. Then your lymphatic system can pump out toxins. Your heart is strong and pumping the fluids. Your feet, you're not going to have to get surgery on your knees. And so there you can just look at, there's just kind of fun where I post videos there. But the most stuff is definitely on my website.
And it is a fun website. I've spent more than a few minutes poking around it.
It's coming. This is my life. This whole thing has been coming my way for like really 30 years. And it's mostly out of my own struggle, my own failure, thousands and thousands of hours and dollars barking up the wrong tree. And I'm finally finding that peace, just like when I see the sun rising. That's what we all really need more of, is the peace, because the body cannot change when we're under force. We need to find a certain amount of ease to change.
Who would have imagined that when we started dancing in a basement in backwoods Kansas many years ago, it would amount to the rise of a sun that is radiating out and helping people right here, right now, today. That's a beautiful thing, Deb. Thank you for being on this show.
Thank you, Scott.
If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to press the subscribe button. You need to follow us for more. We've got a ton of fascinating episodes exploring all types of leadership issues and questions through the lens of Greek myths. If you have a particular leadership question or issue that you want us to address here on this show or elsewhere, please let me know in the comments. Also, if you have a favorite Greek myth or a Greek character from mythology that you want us to build an episode around or show up elsewhere on my YouTube page, let me know there as well, because I want to be here for you. That's what this is all about. Be sure to come back next time for another awesome visit here at the Mythslayer Cafe. And in the meantime, I want your future to be epic.